Hi friends, welcome to another episode of Nature Walks with Gabe. There is definitely no discrepancy in the timing of this introduction and the timing of the rest of the episode. And it's a beautiful fall day at the time of recording, as you can see. So with that true knowledge in mind, enjoy. Today I'm at Milne Hollow, which is a part of the Charles Sorial Conservation Area along the Don Valley Parkway in Toronto. Before we get started, allow me to apologize for the traffic noise in the background of much of this episode. I've tried to remove as much of it as I can in post-production, but please bear with me. I always find it interesting to see which trees are changing color first. And clearly that maple's got a leg up on even the other maples around it. Very interesting. Listen to the sounds of the bugs. Now that it's fall, the sumac is changing color. Goldenrod's in full bloom. Lots of big purple asters ready, coming up. And the bugs are busily working because they know time is running out. Ooh, who's that guy? Nice honeybees here, but there's an orthopteran back there. Hello. Blue jays calling. Look at all these bees. Chickadees calling. Fall is a great time to go looking for wildlife. Not to mention, it's just beautiful. Every species living in Ontario has to prepare for winter with the snow and the dropping temperatures mean that food is difficult to find. And among insects, we see a diversity of different strategies for survival. One strategy is to stock up for the winter. Among insects, the honeybees are the best example of this. We're seeing western honeybees here at these flowers primarily, and these bees are gathering up nectar, the sweet fluid that's inside each little flower, as well as pollen, the high protein product that plants make as part of their reproductive process, to take back to their hive, and they'll use that to make honey, and also a substance called bee bread, which is mostly made out of the pollen, both of which preserve for a long time and will keep the bees and their young alive throughout the winter. These honeybees collect nectar in their stomachs, they suck it up through their mouth, but they collect pollen simply by landing on flowers and having it stick to the many hairs around their bodies. Though these western honeybees also, you'll notice, have often an orange kind of blob on their back legs. And this is because there is a network of fine hairs there that provide a little basket for holding pollen. And the hairs there are so fine we actually can't see them well, even when I'm zoomed in like this. Of course, honeybees are not the only kind of bees that we have here in Ontario. Here's a good example of a bumblebee on the left and a honeybee on the right. See how much darker the bumblebee is? Darker and bigger. But still definitely a bee. There's the honeybee. It's more orange in coloration. But there tend to be more of them around. Bumblebees have a very different strategy for surviving the winter than honeybees. Bumblebees will be collecting the same materials, nectar and pollen, from the flowers to take back to their queen so that she has a storage of food while she is in diapause over the winter. It's basically hibernation. The rest of the group of bumblebees will simply die off. Similarly, grasshoppers and their relatives survive in Ontario year by year because females lay their eggs in the fall in a sheltered space, and those eggs are tough enough to be able to survive the winter. In the spring, they hatch, and then, within the year, they will grow up, breed, the females will lay their own eggs, and then they will die, and the cycle begins again. This may seem sad to us, but this is the normal life cycle for grasshoppers, bumblebees, and many other insects, and this is how they've always survived in our world. So I was really lucky on this day to actually see a female grasshopper in the middle of laying her eggs. This is a two-striped grasshopper. And you can see her abdomen is curled down into a small hole in the pavement of the path, and that's where she's laying her eggs. And she has a stalk that comes out from her back end, which you can't see right now. That's where the eggs come out. It's called an ovipositor. The ovipositor is actually the same structure that is the stinger on bees and wasps and similar insects. I'd never actually been able to see this behavior before. It's very cool. And she just finished. And that's the hole. How weird is that? Oh, there she goes. Over there. Good mama grasshopper. Grasshoppers aren't the only animals that will lay their eggs in the fall so that they can hatch in the springtime. Some species of fish will do this as well. Here on the northern shores of Lake Ontario, we have a very interesting situation because historically we had a large population of Atlantic salmon that lived in the lake, but by the year 1900 these were basically wiped out by human activity. However, through the next 100 years after that, there were many introduction events of Pacific salmon, particularly the coho and Chinook salmon, so you can see a Chinook salmon here, into the lake because they are desirable food for humans to eat. And these salmon began establishing their own populations and reproducing like they do rather famously in much larger numbers out on the Pacific coast of North America. So here in the Greater Toronto area, you can find salmon swimming up most of our major rivers, including the Don River in the fall, and they're doing just this, looking for and preparing a suitable place to lay their eggs. By swimming up shallow rivers and digging holes or trenches in the stream bed, salmon can provide their eggs and developing young inside a more protected environment from predators during the freezing winter than they would have if they were just deposited at the bottom of the lake where the adults live for most of the year. While we don't have anywhere near the same numbers of salmon here as can be found out in the Pacific Ocean, the migration upstream is still very remarkable, and they still face many obstacles. These guys are amazingly strong and persistent at going upstream. They're adept at swimming against strong currents, even though the current here isn't particularly strong. And they're amazing leapers. They can jump out of the water over 2 meters. That's higher than I am tall. And they can clear dams and logs and weirs like this one with ease. And these fish are big. Chinook salmon kind of average around 50 centimeters, and the record breakers have been around 150 centimeters long. For our friends who measure in imperial, that's kind of 2 foot average up to just under 5 feet for the record breakers. I can't see it. Where'd it go? It's right over here somewhere. It's right in front of me. How neat is that? Fall is also a time when there's a lot more food in the forest. Like these maple trees, which are full of keys, which have a seed in the end. We also call these helicopters because when they fall, they spin. And hopefully we'll go further away from the parent tree. I don't know what kind of plant this is, but clearly it has berries. Fall is a good time for berries, another fruit in the woods. And clearly this plant has also been munched on by somebody. This plant is usually laden with big black berries in the fall, in the autumn. This is called Buckthorn. Got these black berries, these big old thorns. You can see the thorn? And it can easily take over the understory, the lower part, near the ground of a forest and choke out other small plants and saplings. Now when I think of winter and birds, I usually think of migration, when animals travel from a place where resources are scarce to a place where they're more abundant. A famous example of this in Ontario is the American robin. You can see a small group here. And they fly south from here as the weather gets colder because it gets harder and harder for them to find their diet of fruit and bugs. But something I've just learned is that there's even a species of woodpecker that migrates in search of food. And that's the northern flicker, which you can see here. I was really blessed on this day to get a great look at this species. You can see one here foraging on the riverbank. These northern flickers are special among the woodpeckers in that they spend a lot of time on the ground. And they're especially good at finding and eating ants and other burrowing and digging insects. And they're aided at this by their long, thin beaks and long, thin, and very sticky tongues, which they use to grab up ants and other insects for food. You can tell the northern flicker apart from other Ontario woodpeckers, and that they tend to be a lot more gray-brown in coloration. Other kinds of woodpecker are pretty much just black and white, though the flickers do have black spots and a black bib on their chest. And the males have a black malar stripe, which almost looks like a mustache. And they also have white on their bellies and a patch just above their tail. But they also have this red crescent on the back of the head, and beautiful bright yellow primary and secondary feathers, which you can see on the underside of their wings when they fly. It's always a treat to see a northern flicker. Hey, thanks for going on a nature walk with me. I appreciate your time. Hopefully you learned some things, and I did too. Or at least I saw some cool things, and we'll have more things to look at in the future. Have a good day. Thank you, Lord, for a good day, for your good creation, for good friends to share it with, and for your care over all these things. Amen.